the glue, hold your breath and fade away. Tell me, what do you see? Baby, what do you see? Do you believe? Do you believe?
Sure.
Yes.
All right, Matt. Welcome to POV Crypto, everyone. We are here to learn about Loopring. It is, maybe Matt can tell us more about it, but from my understanding, it is a decentralized exchange that uses ZK rollups on Ethereum, and they recently added payment infrastructure. They call it Loopring Pay. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself, what you do at Loopring, and then can give us the elevator pitch on what Loopring is.
Sure. Thank you, CK. Thank you, David, for having me. So what I do at Loopring is businessy stuff. I'm one of two non-engineers on the team, I guess you could say. We're about 20 people, 18 engineers, mostly in Shanghai. I'm not over there. I'm in Canada, but um, an Ethereum DEX protocol that's been around since for 3 years now, almost exactly. For the first year and a half of our life, we were just like standard vanilla DEX, or the flavor was specifically off-chain order books, off-chain order messaging, settle the pair on chain. The easiest analog is 0x style thing. What was interesting about us and where we get our namesake was these order rings that you could match, not just one order book, like a two asset pairing, but you could go to n intermediate assets to get to what you want. Something which Gnosis has recently implemented. But a year and a half ago, we started saying, hey, we really want to scale because we have big ambitions and want to take down centralized exchanges. And here we are, capable of doing 2 transactions per second, 2 to 3 transactions per second. And that's with like thinking we're doing a lot of stuff off chain and lightening the load, and it was still pitiful. So we started looking at scaling technologies, and ZK rollups was what caught our eye. This was around, in my mind, it was really like DevCon Prague, where the whispers started happening, and I remember being on the ground there and relaying it to the team. But since then, so for the past year and a half, we've been focused on ZK rollups. We implemented the first ZK rollup on Ethereum in December 2019, so already 6 months old. It's crazy. It feels like yesterday. And we are a ZK rollup exchange protocol. We allow other people to build exchanges on top of our protocol. It's an open source protocol. We also, though, we've only been protocol people our whole lives up until February, where we moved up the stack and built our own user facing on the protocol. And as you just alluded to, we kind of implemented payments in that product as well, both in the protocol level and in our product atop it. So that's what Loopring is. I'm still kind of figuring out how to best say this because our identity has changed. We were a DEX protocol. Now we're like a ZK rollup scalability. We kind of, I don't want to sound like, oh, we became so big. It's certainly not the case, but we became bigger than our original boots, right? Not just dealing with exchanges, but like really like ZK rollup for tackling Ethereum's biggest problems or biggest gas guzzlers right now, which are trades and transfers. So we've kind of expanded our identity, and that's what we are.
So you guys you said you've been around for three or so years, but ZK Rollups has not, right? ZK Rollups has maybe been around for a year. So has this really just been a journey of trying to discover what the best problems are and what the best solutions for those problems are? And can you kind of take us through that journey?
Yeah, good point. I think, well, certainly ZK Rollups have been around longer than a year, but like I also feel like it's been a year, and you're perfectly in line with everyone else who thinks that. But yeah, like Vitalik and Barry Whitehat, there's been like some ETH research posts that predate that. But yeah, I mean, like our origin story is the fact that our founder, Daniel Wang, like quite an experienced developer at normal style companies, he got into crypto and launched a centralized exchange in 2014 or 2015, and it wasn't that successful. I think it was based in Shanghai where he was, and he's like, okay, this isn't it's not that cool compared to all the crypto stuff that could capture the imagination. So he said he got really involved in Ethereum, and we launched Ethereum Loopring Dex protocol, which, as I said, our thing and our namesake, which still carries on, was these order rings, which I used to really love. Yeah, like, I mean, I used to really love that because it had this philosophical. I used to tell people, oh, but we match things in rings, which could kind of like obviate the need for like money, right? Like you don't need to price things in DAI or ETH or Bitcoin. Like you need not have one quote currency that is like the social convention. You could go, from whatever token A to token B to token Z. In our implementation, it was like N equals 16. And on a philosophical level, that was really cool. It's like you don't need an intermediate money. You could just go from like what you have to what you want, right? Like in a market where there was like no search costs. And anyways, so that's what we were. We thought that would increase liquidity. It sounds right and it sounds nice, but it wasn't such a liquidity catcher. We never like really launched a product that was so like, okay, here we go. This is the flagship thing. It was kind of like we were still always building, and we never thought we had like a centralized exchange killer on our hand, to be clear. But yeah, scalability. I'm not sure how it kind of, our CEO kind of tells a story that he said this on a recent, I think it was Epicenter, but he asked the team, hey, are you guys excited about what we're doing? And we're all like, it's cool, but we didn't think we were in the best competitive position, and we were just gonna, really, crush it. Maybe we were. So ZK rollups, it just scalability. I shouldn't say ZK rollups at that point. Scalability. We thought, okay, we need to be able to go fast, go cheap, and compete. And that's what scalability was for us. It was a tool to get to mainstream and volume and stuff like that. That's where this path started a year and a half ago, halfway into our life.
So one really important point that we want to get into is like mainly the trust factors of loopring, right? And so the instigation of this podcast was I tweeted out, can we just start calling loopring network Lightning Network now? And that obviously is an inflammatory tweet. And so CK here was like, okay, well, let's get somebody from Loopring on to talk about and compare and contrast like the trust assumptions of Lightning Network versus the trust assumptions of Loopring. So in what ways is Loopring like trusted, centralized, permissioned, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Or in what ways is it not?
Right. I'm glad for that inflammatory tweet because here I am. And yeah, so what Loopring is right now. The Loopring protocol is a bunch of open source smart contracts.
Yeah, we're gonna have to start them over.
Yep.
On Ethereum, zero knowledge
Yo,
circuits.
hey Matt.
The
Sorry,
logic.
I gotta cut you off real
sorry.
quick. Maybe you'd be helpful if you turned off your video because you kind of chopped out there for about 30 seconds.
Should we start?
Yeah.
Should we turn off our video?
I think I'll be okay. If it happens again, I'll turn off the video, or I could do it now.
All right.
Whatever.
Start over.
Let's keep going. But yeah, you cut off right at the beginning, which is actually
Right.
kind of
Okay. So Loopring is a set of open source smart contracts on Ethereum and a set of open source zero knowledge circuits. That is the Loopring protocol. Some smart contracts and some zero knowledge circuits. It is just rules that specify how to do some computations off chain that kind of get processed through this, black box of these zero knowledge circuits that spits out a verifiable thumbprint of everything that just happened, and it's smaller and it's compressed, and we put that on Ethereum, which is a verification layer. It says, yep, that is a real proof. I could tell because math, moon math, alien math, right, all over my head, but the proof exists. It's validity proof. The computation was executed correctly. And actually, we also use it as a data availability layer. Like, to be called a rollup, it means like you're rolling up all these things off chain, these like transactions off chain. In our case, the largest number is like 4,096 of these things that we put into a box, compress them, and we put them, we put the validity proof on chain. We also put a little bit of extra data. Technically it's speaking, it's like because what's important there is we put the new Merkle root, right? A ZK rollup, the state lives in a Merkle tree, which is just summarized succinctly by the Merkle root. And the Merkle root changes because account balances changed. And we say the account balance is changed in accordance with the protocol rules. No theft, no random trades at random prices, all signatures are there. And here's the new Merkle root. And here's the proof that says we got from the last one to the new one with following these rules. In addition to that, though, we put a bit of extra data. It's the deltas of the Merkle leaves, of the individual transactions. We have to be able to map how one little piece of this state went from X to X1, how it went to the new one. So we put a bit of extra data, and that is what a roll-up is. There's been a lot of also, Twitter inflammatory stuff about what's a roll-up, what's a plasma, we have a new word now, validium. So we put this extra little data on chain, which kind of like weighs us down, right? Instead of just putting the new Merkle root in the proof, we kind of have like an incremental cost with every transaction. It's like 300 gas to be specific. So it's a small incremental cost. Like the big publishing of the block is like, call it 300,000 gas. That is amortized over 4,096 transactions. That's where we get our scaling efficiencies from aggregating and putting like a fixed overhead cost. But a roll-up means we put this extra incremental cost that'll on chain. So Ethereum is actually storing that little bit of data. And that little bit of data, like, I don't want to go too into the weeds here, but it's just actually the most prominent point for David's question is, with that extra data on chain, anybody could assert that their balance is that little Merkle leaf in the Merkle tree. Let's call it 0x427 is mapped to Merkle slot account ID number 1452. And I need to be able to say that is mine in the worst case scenario, when loopring protocol builders go away or turn malicious, when the loopring application itself gets shut down, or for whatever reason, or a state level actor leans on somebody. All that needs to happen in the ZK rollup is Ethereum exists with all that little like extra baggage data I mentioned, so anybody could reconstruct a past state of the Merkle tree. There's enough puzzle pieces, little data in Ethereum, where I could say this was the state of the world 5 minutes ago before everybody ran away or got whatever, something bad happened, or turned malicious. And this is the new, that's the state of the world, and that's my account. And I could submit what's called a Merkle inclusion proof just to Ethereum and retrieve my assets that are locked in that deposit contract. So a ZK on the spectrum of layer 2, and this is my these days, like if you look at a lot of the research and cool comparison charts that are coming out these days, ZK rollup is right on the right side extreme, which in my side is security. No compromise to layer 1 security guarantees. Like, whereas Plasma, optimistic rollups, they're somewhere not strictly to the right. ZK rollup is at every fork in the road where there's a design decision, it chooses security. For the state transition is verified with the validity proof, and the data is also kept on chain. And for that, it loses some scalability. It can't run as fast as the others because it has a little extra heavier load. And it loses some generalizability and composability just by virtue of the circuits, which can't have arbitrary logic in them, too many constraints and whatnot. So that's what the loop ring protocol is. I don't know if I should pause there, because there's another component which is really gets to the heart to CK's question of like what could and can happen, which is like the operator, the actual thing doing all this off-chain Merkle tree snark generation stuff. That's a different part. That's like the protocol needs it, but it's a different
So
thing.
yeah, why don't we jump into that, right? Because
Wait, no, let's recap first,
Okay.
Because I just want to clarify. So, there's a transaction made that opens a loop ring application or something that states what the rules of this off-chain computation are going to do, right? And so it instantiates what the L2 that is about to happen, right? And commits to all future blocks of Ethereum that we are going to follow these rules, and you'll be able to check these rules. And then a bunch of off-chain computation happens. And then how often is the off-chain computation published back to Ethereum? Is it once per block or once per 10 blocks, or how does this work?
Right, that's a key question, and that actually depends on the level of demand in our system. There's no like hard-coded rule,
Okay.
right? Like we prefer as like the so loopring.io is the loopring exchange, which is built on the loopring protocol, but forget like that, let's call it like trustless state exchange.com, right? Like, and
it's an application of your own protocol,
right? But because we are the ones interacting with the protocol, doing all the off-chain stuff, we want to wait for the biggest block possible, the biggest ZK rollup batch possible, right? Our scalability comes from the fact that we're aggregating things and committing it with like a compressed proof. We want 4,096 things to be in there and not 12, because then our cost is not amortized as much. So you could, like, the protocol could say that no matter how big the batch size is, you need to submit the next block every 4 minutes because that's the cadence we like. Or the operator could have that ability to wait until literally 12 hours later if that's when they want to wait for their cheapest operational cost.
Okay, so so something is published on some regular cadence back to the blockchain, but that isn't what you were talking about with that little extra bit of baggage. So I still haven't really mapped how that fits in.
Sure. So that baggage is happening whenever there's like so the operator has taking these transactions, aggregating it, creates the proof. When they put that on chain, so they're putting on the new Merkle root plus the snark proof plus the extra baggage, the data availability, the deltas. It's all happening at once. There's not a time when they are when they're doing one thing and not the other. You could conceptualize it as like whenever they're speaking to Ethereum, they're doing all three of these things.
Okay, cool. Okay, so there's only one publishing event, and that is on one cadence.
Exactly. And so to dive right into the heart of this matter of like what bad thing could happen is in that interim period of when the state of the world was published to Ethereum 45 seconds ago to right now, when like CK just like, sold a lot of Ether, that is not final that is not
to the L1.
That is not Ethereum level finality. Some people may say that's not even final right away, whatever. But like that exists in the operator's world where he is saying, yep, like that transaction where CK sold 100 Ether or sent 100 Ether. Right now we do payments. That is just living in like the mempool of the centralized operator. And if he doesn't like CK, he could say like, no, I don't like this transaction. I'm excluding it. So that is the biggest, like what bad thing could happen? We could censor your transaction. We could exclude it. We could just, we don't know who you are, but we don't like account ID number 1552, which maps to Ethereum address ck.eth. I'm not sure if that's the real one, everybody. I'm just making that up. But, so we suppress, we ignore it. And you're pissed, but you have the right to exit, right? That is our promise. That is what ZK Rollup says. You always have your assets. Take them, leave them. You're not happy with our service. Yeah, but we suppressed you, live with it. Of course, what's our deterrent not to do that is normal like business and reputation, and we want to be loved and have users. But we could ignore you. But let me just jump right into my own solution to that bad thing, or not my solution, but the protocol right now supports multiple operators. It doesn't need to be the monolithic loop ring aggregator. It could be a completely open system where people are publishing blocks according to some round robin scheme that is dependent on a staking mechanic, or literally just random. It could be like chaos, and literally people are like front running each other to submit the next ZK rollup block. The reason why we, indeed, on loopring.io, it's serviced by the loopring relayer or the loopring operator, a monolithic thing, is because we don't think our users actually care much about the threat of censorship right now. What they care about is the fact that their assets will always be there. That is our problem that we have bitten off right now. And it's just a greater degree of difficulty to say, yep, Loopring Exchange is serviced by infinite operators, or you could also have a medium style solution, like a moderate solution, where it's like 5 whitelisted operators. So it's not everybody, but it's David, CK, me, and 2 other guys. We're the only ones that could publish blocks. So if I censor CK, maybe the next person will let him in because he doesn't hate him as much. So that exists right now at the protocol level. We implement our kind of own high-powered operator because as I said, our users aren't banging down the door saying, hey, I don't like the fact that you could censor my transaction, but also because we're just like better at it than likely what else is there. Like, right, half of our team, people don't realize it. So half of the team kind of built those smart contracts and the zero knowledge circuits, like the protocol people. And like Brecht, our chief architect, who I wanted to bring on the call with me for some extra technical ammunition, but when you first tweeted, but then actually half of our team has built the relayer, the operator, this off-chain Merkle tree handler and snark proof generator. That is a big part of the Loopring team. We have built it, and we built it really good, and that is closed source. To be clear, that's a closed source implementation. But all it could do is annoy you by not servicing you. It cannot steal your funds.
So I guess this is where it kind of comes into play. Like, obviously, this is extremely different than Lightning Network. I'm curious, like, we understand the protocol is there. People can build on the protocol. People, can come up with any scheme or whatever to coordinate these effective ZK Snark batches. What's the current state of the protocol? Is it just you guys? Are other people looking to build on top of this?
Right. So I'll say, when you say it's different than Lightning, it certainly is. But so Loopring Pay is like 3 weeks old, okay, right? Like, so we basically had this exchange protocol, and then a lot of people were saying like, hey, transfer fees are also getting up there. Gas prices are so high that like even transfers are prohibitively expensive. Hey, Loopring, because we were the only live ZK roll at the time. Hey, could you implement transfers? And we're like, yeah, we can. Like, why don't we? Right? And like at the behest of community members, we said, okay, now there's payments. This scheme of Loopring's application being serviced by one operator made sense in the exchange scenario, where high performance and censorship is not as, or where high performance is demanded and censorship isn't as where it is thing. With Loopring Pay, if somebody wants like remit a payment, it's something more important for censorship resistance to be there. They need to transfer assets. They can't be blocked. It's a more noble, or potentially more noble, cause than trading speculation. I don't fully get behind that statement, but it's a right, like a simple payment needs to have better security guarantees in being able to propagate. So in these past 3 weeks, we will open source a lighter weight version of the operator that doesn't handle the trading, but just handles transfers. And it will be a multi-operator model. So it's true what you say. It's not like it's not as robust as we'd want it to be right now. But now that payments are on our head for the first time, we say, yep, let's actually have it so anybody could submit blocks. But so that's the state. We will open. And the other thing to keep in mind is like the relayer, the degree of difficulty to hosting the order book and updating the Merkle tree is a lot greater than just simple transfers, right? Like it's a hard problem for, if us 3 wanted to service the Loopring exchange, we would have to coordinate our order books. When something happens in the order book, they have to be in sync. And it's like a hard, just like distributed, it's like a whole different set of problems. Like it's kind of like what 0x Mesh is working on or whatever, like these, eminently shareable like order books. That's why it's good to have like a monolithic thing, keeping the state of it. Payments, where you just have somebody that's like, they don't need to maintain an order book. They just need to listen for a bunch of like requests to the network and aggregate them and then submit that ZK rollup block. So it lends itself more to being open to anybody that doesn't have to run this like beast of a software machine, keeping the order book in line and stuff like that. They could just look out for payments. So all that to say, Loopring Pay is going to be an open operator thing for those that want it. It'll be much more easy to be open and not have that censorship potential risk. Yeah.
So current status is ZK Roll protocol, open source and available. Actual implementation of Pay as well as Exchange is currently in-house inside of a closed source system. You guys are planning to release an open source client to enable Pay. So far, early stages, no like network effects. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, that's a good recap. One little thing, there's another DEX built on Loopring called WeDex. WeDex.io, they're based in Shenzhen. They're another Loopring ZK rollup based exchange, but they also use our relayer as a service. So we offer this relayer as, like the old business model of centralized exchange backend white labeling, let's say, right? If somebody wants to build a non-custodial high performance Ethereum based exchange, they could get started today by like calling the one function call that spins up like a kind of child DEX contract. But if they really want to get started today and not build this off-chain relayer, they could engage with our relayer as a service, as WeDex is. So that's a fair state. There's two exchanges built on Loopring protocol, Loopring.io, WeDex.io. There's one relayer servicing it, and with those plans for Pay, as you say. I will say, like, Pay has kind of like blown up the situation in terms of like people wanting to use the technology. We've been like exchange people our whole lives, and then did this like kind of little side thing for payments, and turns out that's what everybody wanted. And is really excited about. So wallets, DeFi portals, things are saying, hey, can we harness Loopring Pay? So we're having those conversations now, whether they'll want to.
That's exciting.
Use our relayer as a service because it's more powerful. Yeah. So that's that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exciting, and I mean, I think you're being relatively fair. I'm curious for Loopring the exchange. Do you guys KYC or is it KYC free?
KYC free.
Okay, so non-custodial and KYC free. Do you guys ever think about like jurisdictional arbitrage and like how to deal with that and how to like make sure you don't get forced to do KYC if you get any meaningful volume?
Yeah, good question. On one of your recent episodes, I'm not sure who was with, but you're saying like you or your guest, one of the prior Matts maybe was saying
It was Matt Odell.
Okay, yeah, you're saying like, okay, look, people like this for regulatory arbitrage. Let's be real. That's what people use. It's a fair statement. It's absolutely fair statement. Yeah, we don't KYC right now. To be clear, somebody could, you could build an exchange that does enforce KYC on Loopring. That's like a configurable part, right? You put up your on-ramp onto the rollup is whitelisted, and then you get on the roll. So at the protocol level, it's agnostic. It can be run without KYC. It could be run with KYC at the protocol level. We are not, to answer your question though, like, do we think about that like jurisdictional hopping? We're not there yet. We're doing $500,000 to $1 million a day in volume. We're not a team of, necessarily compliance thinkers and stuff like that. We're not there yet. Loopring.io. I'll tell you one maybe extra helpful hint in this conversation is we actually open sourced the front end of Loopring Exchange 2 weeks ago. So the front end is an open source thing. If the front end got shut down for whatever reason, somebody could just put it back up there. We open sourced the front end. The one thing that cannot be like respun up if it was leaned on or crushed for something is the relayer. If somebody I mean, sure, we could technically spin up another instance in the cloud, right? All these things are just living in AWS or Google Cloud, but so it could be respun up, but it's obviously not Bitcoin level or Ethereum level untouchability, even though somebody could replicate it and spin up a different instance.
So the Loopring exchange is like one central server for its matching engine. Is that where the logic is held there? Okay, so like
Yeah.
what so it's a non-custodial exchange, right? With extremely strong assurances that users will always be able to receive their funds. However, a nation state could come down and say like, hey, you got to turn that server off.
Exactly. Perfectly put. I like to say sometimes to the layman or a little more layman, we are Coinbase Pro or Kraken or Binance, but can never touch your funds at all. The site, the UI could go down and maybe like we'll stop servicing you one day because we have to, but you will always be able to retrieve your fund. You
Right.
said it perfectly. That's it.
Is that also true for the pay side of things?
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Okay. And then, so like, say that does happen. And so like the biggest moat that any exchange has is like liquidity, right? So when it comes to, if you somehow turn this into a game of cat and mouse where you want to spin up your exchange somewhere else outside of the jurisdiction that shut you down, how easy is it to get all that same liquidity back? All those like participants, are you just gonna have to start from scratch again, or is there some trick up your sleeve that you can port that liquidity over?
Yeah, really good question. I think like I may misspeak here, but I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Like liquidity, it will be annoying to have to respin up, and liquidity will die because there's nowhere. Like it'll just be idle there, so we could leave. But in the same way that you could like port Bitcoin's UTXO set at a certain point of time, you could also do that from like the Merkle tree account balances and do it in a new instance. I could be slightly wrong there, but like, yeah, you could, again, the data lives on Ethereum. You can say, hey, before shit went wrong, this was the state of the world. And now here we are again in this new Merkle tree. But that might cost the operator a lot of money to like recreate a Merkle tree with all these balances. So it's not like, oh yeah, we'll handle that in stride. It's not a good thing, but it's not devastating from the operational point of view, and it's certainly not devastating from the fact that all users get their money back for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you assign a new operator?
Yes.
Before shutting down?
Oh, so this is like so right now, like the Loopring exchange operator is specified as a contract, which is like the relayer. It's a contract. I'm not sure how you could like switch that so easily, like assign a new one. Maybe that's not able to do. But in the model that I'm describing in the open operator model, the contract, like the operator itself is not a single address, it's a smart contract with its own. It's kind of like, you could kind of think about the same concept of like what you could do with like an externally owned account and a smart contract wallet. Like so you could plug and play like that.
Okay. So there's some sort of like anti-fragility option there as well.
Yes, and certainly like right now we're on Loopring v3.1 where the operator of like the Loopring exchange is just this contract, but we are like really moving at a fast pace toward the project and anti-fragility there with version 3.6, which is coming out. And yeah, I guess like, yeah, I'll leave it there. That's the fair way.
So the different versions are new smart contracts that leverage the batching protocol. Is that correct?
Different smart contracts and different zero knowledge circuits in many cases. It need not be like both.
So what's a zero knowledge circuit? Does that require trusted setup?
In our case, yes, it does. So actually, I should have mentioned this as another like potentially bad thing. Like you have the cryptography we use and the proving system we use, like we use Groth 16, which is not one of these universal trustless setup things. It's a trusted setup. We ran one, I guess 8 months ago, and a bunch of people participated. You have to trust that, I think it was 18 or 15, I don't want to misspeak, but at least one of them had to act faithfully. We had mostly Ethereum community members, but also some others, some Bitcoiners or maybe some people that live somewhere in between. You do have to have a neutral. That's the most annoying thing, to be clear. Like for V3.6, we have to do another trusted setup, which is an operational headache. We have to have like our chief architect just simply like calling people, hey, it's your turn. Here's the file I upload to you. Give it to me now in 12 hours. And ours are heavy because our circuits are big. Like there's some, like, when you're like, maybe you saw like the Tornado Cache trusted setup, it was like in browser, like click, like that's so awesome. Ours is like, no, it's like, I don't even understand the requirements of ours. It's like you need like lots of compute power, lots of RAM. It's like, it's fun. It's kind of fun because I remember like wrangling people to participate in our trusted setup at ETH Waterloo. And like the only people that cared were like the DevOps people or the people like, whoa, that's big. Like, I want to try to tackle that. Like people tried to like do it really like fast and efficiently, but yeah, it's a process to do the trusted setups whenever you need a new ZK, a zero-knowledge circuit.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. I have one more question. David, do you have anything? And I think we could wrap it up.
I have one question, but it's unrelated.
So slightly unrelated. I know you guys have a token. I did do zero research on the token. What's the deal with the token? Yeah, go from there.
Okay, yeah, this will be the potentially harshest of critics. We'll see.
Dave is also pretty harsh on unnecessary tokens too, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's see what your answer is.
Okay, good. Well, thankfully, I have faith in our model, and it's quite cool. So, part A is from a user's point of view, a normal LRC holder supporter, they could stake it to earn a part of a protocol fee. Okay, that's the typical, or what's becoming a typical DeFi style thing. You stake LRC, and you have your share of the protocol fees, which are 6 basis points just on the trade side right now. 6 basis points of any trade that's settled on the Loopring protocol, so from Loopring Exchange or Wedex, goes into the fee vault, which LRC stakers have a claim on. Right now, there's no protocol fee or fee at all for payments because it's so. Maybe we could talk about the figures, how cheap we're talking about actually in a second, but I'll continue answering the token question. So that's the user side. A DEX owner operator also has to stake LRC for kind of those interim periods where I said it's living in the mempool, or like some type of annoyance could happen, like I'm suppressing your order CK, or just being slow. When Loopring Exchange and when Wedex Exchange spun up their contract, they had to put 500,000 LRC on the line, okay, let's say. And this is like an economic security guarantee before the ultimate cryptographic security guarantee is published to Ethereum. So if I'm being slow or just like misbehaving, but not like the really bad misbehaving, which I can't do, my hands are tied, right? But just be like a poor service level. I actually prefer to call it like a service level guarantee. Like if I try to like revert a block that like I said I was about to publish but didn't, or if I'm being slow, then I get slashed. So it is just an economic bond before the absolute cryptographic finality is put on chain. So I quite like that, right? You have users that have a bit of a guarantee before the batch is processed. They know that there's some extra economic guarantee that, or deterrent if they don't act. So that's what LRC does. That's what LRC does right now. I will make a little caveat here, or a little asterisk. This token model is actually like 11 months old, and we've come a long way since then. Now we have payments. So there's a lot of little nooks and crannies, I think, where the token could help, in the same, like this economic security guarantee that your transaction will be processed by an operator. We could use LRC for that as well, and that like staking round robin mechanism. So there's actually like a blossoming and kind of green field where we could use the token for some extra guarantees. But right now it's those two sides of staking. Normal users for protocol fees, DEX owners for a service level guarantee before the proofs are published.
When the exchange charges that 6 basis points on a trade, what is that paid in?
The 6 basis points is in whatever token. It goes into the fee vault in whatever token, in the buy token of the
Okay.
transaction. So it's a grab bag
Okay.
of tokens.
Okay, so there's one central pool of assets, of many different assets, that then the token has a claim on.
Yeah, so like if you're staking in the LRC staking contract, which
Uh-huh.
right now has like 11% of total supply is in there,
Mhm.
then it has a claim on that fee vault. But the fee vault, just to provide a bit more clarity, 70% of the fee vault get paid to stakers.
Mhm.
10% gets burnt, and 20% goes into another contract, which is to fund a forthcoming Loopring DAO for when we get into the governance that will be needed. So that vault is actually partly going to stakers, partly getting burnt, partly going to fund the distributed governance, hopefully.
You guys gonna do some liquidity mining mechanism with that fund?
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Potentially. You know, it's really funny.
Oh boy.
We launched liquidity mining like a week before COM, but
Yeah.
like the old school style, like the Hummingbot style of like, hey, place orders on the order book. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but like place orders on the order book, and we have like this pool of assets that will pay out to people that placed resting limit orders, like the old, yeah, like the Hummingbot style liquidity mining. And then that week, liquidity farming became a huge thing. We got like so lost in the dust on that, you know, like, hey, there's also like you could trade here and also get some type of yield, but yeah, that's besides the point.
So I guess kind of on that tip, like how was LRC token distributed in the first place? What's the deal with the supply? If you do add in the governance, is that governance for the centralized loopering relayer, or is it for the actual protocol? Like, let's get into that kind of stuff. I know we're definitely diving down a well here.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a very interesting topic in my mind. First of all, I don't think it can be for the off-chain prover thing, right? That's like living in the real world. You
Okay.
could try to map some type of governance and be like, hey, but it would just be like signaling at the end of the day, because if somebody, forget we, but if some other operator wants to change things, like they will.
Okay.
It's off-chain.
That makes sense.
But yeah, like, but they could govern certain of those parameters that we've lightly touched on, like how quickly does a block need to be submitted, right? What is that cadence? Maybe we do mandate that it's maybe it's 5 minutes, or it's 100 Ethereum blocks, like, right? They could configure that, or they could configure how much does a DEX need to stake, right? It used to be $500,000, now it's $1 million, right? We want more
Makes
skin in
sense.
the game. So anything like on chain, they could configure, or could become governable parameters. Back to the token sale, I'm not sure I have like much interesting to say there. It was like the average 2017. Well, I shouldn't say the average, because there were some like terrible ones. It was in the good bucket.
So it was
The
an
average good
ICO
one.
distribution.
It was an ICO distribution. 20% was for the team. That was locked up for 2 years. So we're 3 years old right now. That was locked up for 2 years. That started to vest a year ago over another 2 year time horizon. So 1 out of 24 every month, 1/24 every month. So that has been vested. Technically, half of that has been vested right now. We have not, though. What has become vested, we have taken and not sold, and restaked into the open staking contract, where everywhere I have taken our restaked it with everybody. Sorry, did I get cut off there? I'm not.
Yeah, just a little bit, but you're back.
Yeah. So what has, not that this deserves some award or anything, but just to signal our faith in the project. What has come due vesting, we have restaked into like the normal staking contract with everybody. Which, by the way, isn't an objective good thing, like, or isn't a strictly good thing, because that means we're actually crowding out other users for the claim on rewards. So some people may not like that. They may wish that we take out our stake and get rid of it. But like, we actually want to earn our own protocol fees as well. We believe in the project, so we're there.
Cool, Matt. Thank you for coming on the podcast and kind of hashing out these details. It's definitely like these things are a lot more nuanced than they appear on Twitter. So thanks for coming on and clearing things up. For people who want to find you and learn more about yourself and Loopring, where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you, CK. I appreciate that. You could find me on Twitter at Finestone Matt. That's my last name and then Matt, Finestone Matt, or at loopring.org on Twitter. I guess that's where most things happen. I'm starting to get more active there now that there's more interesting combos to have, such as the one that started this off. I'm more active there. But yeah, guys, thank you. It was a pleasure to be on. I hope it shed some. Let me maybe I could end with a question here. What is your this all got started with your wanting to hash it out. How do the chips lie right now to you, CK? Specific, and David, please, but yeah, CK.
You're muted, Christian.
In terms of comparing it to Lightning Network, I don't think you can really compare because Lightning Network is an actual network of nodes right now. There's nothing I can say that, definitively this will not continue to, become adopted in the Ethereum community. So maybe that will happen. I don't know yet, but it's clearly not, a network of thousands of nodes, participating together to create a censorship resistant network that just hasn't been created yet. So, I mean, it's interesting, and I'd love to learn more. There's little things about ZK Snarks and that I'm not technical enough to understand. There's the boogie word of trusted setup, so I don't really know how much to care about that, but I guess it's not 100% trustless. I don't know. That's my impression.
Yeah, I've never really thought that trusted setups are really that big of a deal, because it seems trivially easy to generate a trusted setup that is just overly complex to where the point where you can basically assume that the trust is gone, and that's a pretty good assumption. To me, it's the central server that really questions my ability to scale this thing, right? Because the definition of centralized is a central server, right? And so when it comes to robustness and long-term planning and nation state resistance, that server is a huge liability, right? Now, so it's a liability for the protocol, but not for nothing else, which is a huge value add, right? So users' funds are never threatened, and so no one should ever really feel insecure about using a central server, which is the beauty of loopring. But when it comes to guessing is this thing going to be around in 50 years, 100 years, it's a little bit more fragile because of that one central server, right?
Right. I agree 100%. Well said by both of you. And I'm actually, to be able to push back on that last one, I'm happy we will have this open operator model for payments. It doesn't even need to be, by the way, oh, there's a network of nodes running. I think that it could be as easy as if on the payment side, if nobody is submitting your block that you're waiting for, then you can do it. It's just you will be submitting, but you might lose some of the scalability gains at that point because you're not set up for it. Right. You're not set up to aggregate all of the other 4,000 people with you. You're just going to make sure that you get into the queue. But you'll have to pay for that ability. So there will be that that extra toughness. But fair points by both of you. That's what I like to say sometimes. You on the exchange side of things, and up until this point, you could think of Loopring as a centralized exchange with its hands tied and cannot harm your funds. And that might, as much as it may pain us, decentralized focused people, that's a more palatable proposition to people, who could understand it quicker.
I would like to see a version of. Now, wait for Matt to come back.
Yeah, thanks.
There we go. I would like to see a version of Loopring Exchange where the server, the node operators is dictated by the LRP token stakers. LRP token, right?
LRC.
LRC, excuse me. LRC. The LRC token stakers. I don't know if that's technically feasible, but that sounds like a great way to kind of generate robustness in that and decentralize that node operator.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually bug our architect on that all the time. Hey, could we
I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of that idea.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean when I say okay, I like our token. I think it has cool uses for a normal user and the DEX side, but we're actually just getting to a point where we could use it for that type of thing. Their stake, right? Maybe their ability to submit blocks is proportionate to their stake in the game, right?
Just like Ethereum 2.0 staking. You could
Exactly.
even use like the beacon chain for randomness for slot selection.
All right, guys. This was
Okay,
a fun
yeah, let's
rip.
wrap it up.
Thanks for explaining it all, and thanks for going on the tangents. You guys can find the show at POV CryptoPod. You can find me at CK_Snarks. David.
You can find me at Trustless State, both on Twitter and on Bankless. Thanks, Matt, for coming on.
Also,
Thank
come
you,
back.
guys.
Go for it, Matt. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks for having me, guys. It was enjoyable. Thanks.
Also,
Cheers.
come back in 30 minutes. Colin Harper is coming on. We're doing a doubleheader tonight.
Yeah, if he replies.
Oh, damn.
Colin.
Okay.
All right.
Guys.
All right. Thanks, Matt.